Hi, I'm Chris Spizak, and this is the Words You Should Know podcast. A few stolen minutes out of your day to talk words and communication, because our daily lives are surrounded by the evolution of and the influence of words. Forget the grammar police. There is so much more to this conversation. Welcome to episode 33. Starting out, as always, with the latest in word, language, and writing news. Here's your update as of this recording in early December 2020. The Word of the Year lists have started to come out, folks. Sure, some industries have the best financial quarter of the year, wildlife photographers have the best snapshot of the year, sports fans have their top play. The dictionaries, on the other hand, have their top words, and 2020 has been a big one. No light choices like woot here, that's W00T, thank you 2007. Some of my favorites on this year's list include unmute, a top 2020 word according to Oxford dictionaries. Unmute, so applicable, right? I know you're with me. And while pandemic did win top word of the year over at Merriam-Webster, yes, logical, timely, and historic, my favorites are in the runners-up, like kraken, icon, and malarkey. And we're going to just ignore the fact that Merriam-Webster also officially added irregardless as a word in the dictionary this year, and that this nonsensical mistake turned casual usage was just given its own seal of approval. Oh, English language, you evolve in such strange ways. I think this is where I'd add the shrug emoji if I was writing, which leads to another question. Do you consider emojis a form of writing? So many questions, so little time. Rounding out the lists, the Collins Dictionary named lockdown as its word of the year. But again, my favorites are in the runners-up, TikToker and mukbang. Am I saying that right? The latter is one of the few words borrowed from Korean and brought into the English language. And it means, of course, a video or webcast where someone eats a large quantity of food for the entertainment value. Right? We really don't know what to do with you, 2020. Interestingly, Collins also points out that new verbs formed this year. From socially distant, we now have to socially distance. And while self-isolating did already exist as a verb, this verb form has already overtaken self-isolation, the noun form, in popular usage. It has been a wild year, and I know you can probably think of so many better adjectives for this year than wild. Here is your fill-in-the-blank opportunity. What descriptor would you attach to it? Okay, since we're talking end-of-year summaries, let's wrap up this last podcast of 2020 on an English language history and trivia note that might both surprise you and warm your language-loving heart, or at least that's my reaction. Let's talk about the glamour of grammar. No, not tossing pearls onto semicolons or diamonds onto Oxford commas. Oh, but I do love those Oxford commas. I'm talking about the words glamour and grammar. Did you realize that these two words are etymological siblings? Here's what you need to know. Both of these words, glamour and grammar, both seem to trace their ancestry to the classical Latin word grammatique, which involved the methodical study of literature and languages. But as time and cultures evolved, this concept of grammatica came to be known not only as the study of Latin. By the Middle Ages, it came to be known as learning in general. The masses did not have access to education. Latin grammar, as well as other things, wasn't available to most of European society, so the word evolved into a bigger scope. And then, because education in general was mysterious to many, with common ideas that studying subjects like science was akin to studying magic and the occult, the idea of grammar took another twist. In fact, an old French word related to grammar was used to describe the occult sciences of magic and astrology. There's even an obsolete English noun, grammare, meaning occult learning, and necromancy, as well as learning in general. So yes, in the Middle Ages, grammatica meant scholarship and learning, but the idea of the occult and learning lingered. But then where does glamour come in? I hear you asking it. Well, the mysteries of this pair do remain, but it seems commonly accepted that glamour is a Scottish twist on the word grammar, holding on to the idea of magic and allure and dropping over time the relationship with education. There's a precedence of L and R swaps in the English language. For example, an army colonel is commonly pronounced like a kernel of corn, as if there's an R, But there is no R in colonel, kernel. So grammar changing to glamour has a precedent. Of course, some argue that glamour is a mixing of glimmer and grammar, but that's a less popular theory. If you ask me, there's a lot of glamour in grammar no matter how they're connected, but somewhere deep in my grammar-loving heart, I do love this connection so much. Mysteries and magic in grammar, glamour in grammar, I believe it all the way. Maybe that explains our fascination with this subject. And for today's language challenge, let's keep talking magic, or specifically sleight of hand. Think fast. How do you spell that word sleight in the expression sleight of hand? And here's a second question for you today, going back to that idea of glamour. If something has a certain cachet, how do you spell that word? Ooh, are these questions tricky today? The answers, as always, are in my show notes. Concluding with this episode's personal update, 2020 has been a year that has made us all stop and reflect on so many levels, and for all of us to count our blessings. As of this recording, my third book, The Family Story Workbook, 105 Prompts and Pointers for Writing Your History, has officially launched into the world, and my virtual book tour is well underway, with stops in Richmond, Virginia and Austin, Texas behind me, and stops from New York to Georgia to Arizona to Pennsylvania ahead. And I should also share that my first book, Get a Grip on Your Grammar, 250 Writing and Editing Reminders for the Curious or Confused, is now being distributed in India via a partnership between my publisher, Career Press, and HarperCollins India. I say this as an update on my work at the moment, but also as a moment to pause and reflect. We all use our words every day. We all have stories. We all have voices. Everything I do is centered on empowering writers' words, whatever they may be. So as we're wrapping up this year, take a moment to ponder what you're working on and what you have to say. How are you going to do it? I can honestly say that I cannot wait to find out. Tweet at me on Twitter at Chris Spizak or send me an email. I am cheering you on every step of the way. Are you curious or confused about the words you use every day? For more information on language news, trivia, tips, and explorations, I invite you to sign up for my monthly newsletter at getagriponyourgrammar.com. That's also a great place to learn about my books, Get a Grip on Your Grammar, the Novel Editing Workbook, and the Family Story Workbook. Again, thank you so much to those of you who have taken the time to review or rate this podcast wherever you listen. It's a simple way to help more listeners discover the show and for me to know your thoughts on what you love, what you find interesting, or anything else. The English language continues to evolve. Isn't it fascinating? I hope you'll join me next time here at the Words You Should Know podcast. Subscribe today if you haven't already. Until next time, words, language, communication. We've got this.